Hi, everyone. Hi, Lauren. It's good to see you. We've been emailing back and forth so much.
Hi,
Good,
Sydney.
good to see your actual face.
Thank you.
We'll wait a few more minutes since it's not even quite the top of the hour. And I'll pull up our agenda.
Hey, Sydney.
Hey, how's it going?
I'm doing well.
It's good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. Um, yeah, Delaney and I were just talking about all the ways and means stuff. Um,
Are you guys going to go and advocate?
yeah, I think both of us are gonna attend. Sarah's out of town this week. Um, but we're trying to get some more like farmer representation.
Cool. Well, thank you for doing it. And
Yeah.
don't forget to plug Food Hub. It's definitely a term that our legislators don't necessarily 100% get.
Okay, good to know. Yeah.
And I think Shin was going to send you some talking points too.
Yeah. Great. That's awesome.
I'm on a different Zoom. I'm on the OCFSN Zoom today, and it's like it's not set up the way I usually set up my Zoom. It's like I can't find people. Where is everybody? See Jasmine, got a bunch of note takers. The note takers have started to creep back in. Delaney, Caitlin, Christy, Sherilyn. I don't think I've met you before at Milk Crate Kitchen. Good to see some new names.
Hi, Sydney. Yes, I'm new. I'm part of the OCFSN and the VeggieRx Learning Lab.
Ah, I love it when we start getting some crossover.
Yeah,
Good to see you.
thank you.
And who else do we have? Elena, I don't think I've met you before. Madeline, I'm not sure if I've met you.
Yeah, I
Good to
just
see you.
got recommended to join this group through the Classic and I Food Hub.
Oh, awesome. I like it when our food hubs recruit other food hubs. That's the very, very best. Awesome. Well, I think we're at the top of the hour now, and we have our guest speakers here today, who is the folks from Hummingbird. Charlie is going to talk about how Hummingbird came to be and what the shared kitchens at Hummingbird are like. And we also have Lauren from Hummingbird. Take it away, folks.
Oh, Charlie, I think you're muted.
Thank you, Sydney. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. We very much appreciate it. And Laura and I are excited to share about our incubator kitchen, and I'm happy to take any questions along the way. We have a little PowerPoint presentation to start. It sounds like we have about 15 minutes, is that right, to share? And maybe some time for Q&A afterwards.
Yeah, you can take as much time as you need. Most people do somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes, and then we usually have 10 to 15 or 20 minutes of Q&A.
Okay, great.
So whatever works.
So I'm not as familiar with Zoom, so I'm going to try and share PowerPoint presentation if I can. And here's, are you
There
seeing
you
what you should be seeing? You see
Yep.
Hummingbird Incubator Kitchen? Okay,
We
so just wanted to share with you about our incubator kitchen. We have two of them that are under the Hummingbird auspices. Hummingbird, I'm going to talk a little bit about what Hummingbird is as part of the presentation, just to give you a context for how we relate to the incubator kitchens. But the first one was established in 2011, and the second one in 2019, both currently operating. Is that switching for everybody? Okay. So who's Hummingbird? Hummingbird is a natural bulk food grocery supplier. We focus on organic products, and we deliver with our own fleet of trucks up north to Bellingham, Washington, and down to San Francisco. We also ship LTL, but mostly we're here focused on customers in the Pacific Northwest. That's my wife and myself quite a number of years ago. And the idea of the Hummingbird is that we wanted to build a business that, as best as possible, could take care of human needs without creating harm for the environment. And of course, all the other opportunities of beneficial relationships and enjoying life along the way. So that's what Hummingbird's about, and is an attempt to do business and do good at the same time. We have a idea that if you create a vision that's so powerful that makes you want to get up out of bed and solve the problems that are between you and it, it's much more interesting than to just live in the challenges of day-to-day existence. So the idea that we have, that is our big, hairy, audacious goal, is to have the entire world 100% organic in its farming practices. And let's start with our local area and influence as much as we can toward that outcome. We have a set of values that are part of our culture down at the bottom there: service, integrity, and prosperity. And somehow they spell out SIP if you take the first letter of each word. So we're sipping the nectar through our service. We're operating with integrity and honesty and transparency, and we're including prosperity as a goal for all beings and the planet, as well as for the people that work at Hummingbird. Just recently, we did make a large transition for the company, which we changed our corporate structure to one in which the company is held in trust, and the employees get the financial benefit of any profitability that the company generates. So we're in a transition period for that, and there's lots more to talk about there if you had questions, but there is a change in how we've decided to go forward with the sense of ownership of the company. Do have a little film here to share with you that was put together a number of years ago.
I think philosophically, I believe in the power of vision and optimism. Part of what I'd love to do is to inspire myself and the people around me see the possibility of a positive future. Hummingbird is a business that provides organic bulk foods primarily, as well as some grocery foods to set customers from Seattle to San Francisco. Hummingbird wanted to be part of promoting local food. And one of the ways to have that happen is to provide a gluten-free commercial kitchen that's part of Hummingbird's waste space in the building. The incubator kitchen is very much associated with the personalities of the businesses that are part of it, so it has a life of its own.
I truly believe that food is an incredible weapon, and it can either help you with the fight against illness, or it can aid your body in helping these illnesses thrive.
We're really happy to have positive community cures. Their recipes are for people who have been diagnosed with cancer and are designed to help them in the process of recovery.
Our mission here at PCC is twofold. We would like to meet the immediate need in the community, and we would like to be proactive. We feel that educating teens in healthy living and healthy cooking is a great way of preventing these cancers from happening. The teens are learning not only about the food, but they're also learning about a sustainable building, composting. They're learning about all of the wonderful things that they can do to recycle.
They make it really easy for people using the kitchen to use existing centralized systems in the building. Another opportunity to educate about how to manage the movement of materials that normally would be considered waste.
We love the incubator kitchen. It's an amazing community of people that are brought together just because of their love of cooking and their wanting to be a healthier community.
The networking that occurs is really valuable. The best value for the collaboration that can occur is that conversation. They also have access to myself and the kitchen manager. Access and entry points into the food system are limited. And this is one way to improve the access. The incubator kitchen is a place where a variety of personalities can come, try out their ideas. Some of whom will find they didn't want to do that because it was something other than what they experienced, and other people will be successful and turn it into a business that supports themselves.
There we go. So just to try to give you a little, visual juice there. Some of those tenants are still in the kitchen and some are moved on. There's a new cast of characters. Where is the kitchen? The kitchen is located in Eugene. We have a couple of buildings that together we call the Barrow. It's basically a local food hub that is benchmarked by Hummingbird. That big red building there was the first one, and then the gray one on the left is the second. In those buildings is a shared office and warehouse spaces, so it's a mixed use environment. A lot of commercial tenants that sort of hold down the value of those buildings. And then Hummingbird occupies about 37,000 square feet, including production space and warehouse space in there. The two incubator kitchens, one in each of the buildings. There's a restaurant, and there's other health and environmentally focused organizations that are doing the commercial leasing that are in the office side. So we have this environment that's sort of a shared opportunity to express values associated with healthy living. Just give you a context for the incubator kitchens. This is the red building, and you can see here 1,000 square foot kitchen with exterior cooler and refrigeration, and then storage area sort of associated with these that is flexibly used by the tenants. As they start small, they rent one spot, and then as they get bigger, they can rent additional places, and that's part of the income stream associated with the kitchen. The Mahonia is a smaller space, about 700 square feet, and a cooler and a freezer associated with it, and some storage space out front, much less dynamically connected to the rest of the building. Some interior shots give you a sense of the kitchen space. This is the Stellari kitchen. We have a strategy associated with kitchens, which is to simplify management. And so the expectation is that each individual kitchen user is supplying their own small equipment, any spoon or bowl or other accessory that they need to accomplish their task. They own that, they wash that, they keep track of that. And we have storage racks for them to use, like a covered rolling metro that they can move their small accessories in and out of the kitchen. And we provide the basic utilitarian aspects, the hood, the stove, the rolling tables. They're expected to clean the kitchen after they're done. And that has really been a very strong working model. We can see our kitchens have been around a long time. This is a rather difficult way of making a living, and I'm not sure I would recommend to anybody to have a standalone business that's just focused on incubator kitchens as a revenue generating activity. But this is the way we keep it a relatively simple management exercise, like getting new tenants, making sure that they're qualified and using the kitchen, making sure that problems are getting resolved, scheduling is taken care of, and they are handling their business activities and small equipment. Here's the 2024 results of the incubator kitchen finances, making a annual profit of 22,000 for income of about 96,000. And that doesn't reflect managerial costs. The manager is the manager of the building, and that person is managing lease relationships with all the other commercial tenants in addition to the kitchen. So there is, their job is one part of a many other parted job. I think it would be difficult to pay that manager sufficiently out of the income from the kitchen and have them have a full-time focus on the kitchen. So again, trying to simplify management and have the tenants have as low a fee as possible while still having some income associated with the activity. Hummingbird plays the role of buffering the kitchen from the financial challenges. So if a new mixer is needed or a new oven, Hummingbird has the capital capacity to invest in that new equipment, and is getting the 22,000 in income to support its involvement. So having an adjunct business with a different financial and economic focus that's interested in the incubator kitchen has made it last a long time. Some basic organizing principles, lots of different ways to do this. Great studies out there on that. Probably you're familiar with some of these things already. One of the intentions that we had was that we don't want to use certain types of chemicals or have them in the building as part of our ecological focus. So how do you have all these different tenants use those chemicals that you would prefer they use, you provide them. You provide them with the chemicals. We provide the wash soap, the sanitizers, the things that they use to clean up the floor. All those things are provided by Hummingbird, and that way we have a say over what's being utilized and minimize any potential health or ecological consequences from that. The way we work is that as a kitchen user, you agree to a 30-day lease at a certain set of hours that you're going to use. So say it's 0 to 10. If you use more than that, that's fine in that month, but you're expected to let management know that next month you're going to need 10 to 20. And so those blocks of hours stop the tenant from feeling like every minute is being paid for, which we found didn't lend to a clean kitchen after they were done, because they would want to use their paid time to get the kitchen work done, but cleaning seemed like a non-valuable way of spending money, so they would scrimp on the cleaning. By having a block of time, they don't think like every minute is worth X dollars, and we tended to have a lot better results. So that's been what we've been doing since about year 3, I think. Gluten-free was our way of having our kitchen have a different set of customers and also differentiate itself. There were other incubator kitchens that have come along during the years, all of which has since disappeared for the various challenges that incubator kitchens offer. And ours is still functioning, and part of it is because we have a very particular value that we can offer that's different than a restaurant kitchen sharing their thing temporarily. That's probably not as relevant to this team, but here's a sense of those blocks and the overall costs. And you can see that the cost per hour actually drops with larger blocks. Part of that's because when we have fewer kitchen tenants, there's less management required. So we want to encourage growth and more hours used. But also that individual tenant takes less time on our side, and so we don't need to charge them as much for the handholding for the smaller user or the effort to create scheduling opportunities for that user. The goal has been that we have 1 or 2 large benchmark tenants who use 2 or 3 days worth of our time, and then we backfill with a group of smaller tenants, usually having around 8 tenants in the kitchen at one time as being full, not having available hours available. It is available 24 hours a day. And again, because it's related to the larger building context, we can expand their storage or shrink their storage opportunities, and that's not necessarily a problem because we could use those storage locations for other things like Hummingbird's needs. We do make a fair amount of additional income just charging for the specific storage needs of each individual customer. Usually as they grow, their storage needs grow. And so it gets more expensive for them to rent the kitchen, but they have the volume of business to support that. So these are some examples of what those fees might look like. So that's what we had in terms of presentation, and happy to take your questions. Not sure how to stop sharing, but.
Charlie, I just want to start out by saying thank you for the incredible amount of information that you shared and the transparency in your pricing schemes. We have a lot of shared kitchens sprinkled throughout the state and some new shared kitchens. This is really helpful to us. So from all of us, thank you so much.
You're welcome, and really happy to be a resource if you have questions about how we do things. Happy to have individual conversations. There's a lot of complexity in the realm, and the value is so great for the community. But the financials tend to be an implicating or negative factor in having these stick around. So happy to help anybody if they had questions about how we do it.
Really appreciate it. We have some hot topics in the chat right now. One was some interest in learning more about your specific cleaning chemicals and how you're sourcing those. We have a number of folks interested in that question.
So let me tackle that. So we used to have a soap source that was made here in Oregon, and it was called BioClean. And we'd be able to buy 55-gallon barrels of that, and we were using that also in Hummingbird. That source they're no longer willing to sell barrels, but there are other alternative companies who do sell barrels. One called Ecos out of LA with a really good environmental footprint and cultural value that you can purchase a barrel from. I think Webstront online offers a barrel of that, and that's the way to get your prices down on volumes of material that you can use over time, assuming you have the capital to invest in that, or you can buy a gallon at a time, etc. I think the hardest question is, how do you sanitize? And obviously bleach is very inexpensive, but we feel on the manufacturing and disposal side, bleach has a lot of negative consequences that don't justify the cheap price. So we're using peracetic acid, which think of a very concentrated form of vinegar, and it breaks down into vinegar in an environmental setting. So that's what we're using. It's much more expensive, like 7 times more costly than bleach. So, it's not a strong motivation for a starting out business to pay that extra cost. And so we just decide that's what we're going to do, and then have our fees support that outcome. People have more questions about where we get the peracetic acid. There's a number of sources here in town. And we buy that in 5-gallon buckets, and just you have to be careful because as the concentrations we use, it can be hazardous to use. We have a PPE eyeglass protection and wearing an apron while you're changing that out, which is not for everybody. You can buy it in lower concentrations, and that again, just like bleach, you would be testing with a sample to make sure that your sanitizing rinse is at the appropriate level to get your food safety considerations. I don't know what level of food safety the people on this meeting have, but Hummingbird has a very high expectation both from the FDA and the ODA on food safety. And so we have to meet all those standards anyway, and the incubator kitchen just gets folded underneath those regulatory components. So it's maybe easier for us to digest because we have the internal expertise to manage that. Again, happy to have people reach out to us and ask any questions about how to do that. And we have an extraordinarily competent food safety professional on our team who loves helping small companies and would be happy to either consult for you for free, or if it was more substantial, to help you put a food safety program together. Her name is Chelsea. So hopefully that answers whoever had that
I'm
question.
sorry.
Go ahead,
We
Sydney.
got a few more questions building up in there. Shelley Schuler from Lane County Bounty, who you probably know, you've probably met it somewhere along the way, is asking if you allow sharing of time blocks between 2 tenants that agree to it.
Great question. And yes, we do. And we have a number of tenants who take advantage of that, relatively smaller business. We have a large number of tables there. It's really up to the tenant to decide that works for them, but we're happy to, cut their fees in half by the shared time. And that definitely is something that works really well for the smaller beginning customers that use the incubator kitchen.
Cool. And then somebody was asking about the tenant evaluation. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. So because we have a very light manager presence, typically the manager is not present in the kitchen when the kitchen is being utilized. It obviously depends a lot on the trust and relationship with the people who are using the kitchen to treat the equipment well, to be safe, to clean up after themselves, all those things, right? The collaborative nature of it lends itself to a certain kind of personality. If you're angry, if you tend to blame others for the problems that you're having, if you are, constantly stressed, those tend not to be people who are happy collaborators, right? So we go to a great extent because we found really for our kitchen to function, we need those tenants to be the right kinds of people, not just be willing to pay and capable of paying, but also collaborative. And so that's our onboarding process. We have learned to charge for that. So we charge a non-refundable portion of our deposit, a $50 thing for applications that get accepted. It's free to apply. But if you become an incubator kitchen user and all the training and the how do you use the kitchen comes along with it, door codes and all that kind of stuff, we actually charge $50. And that's probably should raise that now a bit. But usually if people have gotten through those barriers, they're the right kinds of people to get along with the rest of the kitchen users. We have kitchen users who have been there for more than a decade. Within 3 months, maybe a kitchen user finds out this isn't the kind of thing they really like doing. So there's just a variety of longevity, but that helps protect our management from being sort of overwhelming the income opportunity associated with the kitchen.
Aaron Maidlow, it looks like you had some more detailed questions you wanted to ask here.
Yeah, I'm
on
just
this
curious
topic.
what the tenant evaluation, what do you do for that process? Is it something written, or do you just sit down with them and gauge how they are based on a conversation?
Great question. I would be happy to share the questionnaire and all of our materials. If you go to backtothebarrow.com, and I can put this in the chat, but backtothebarrow.com and look at the website under the tab Incubator Kitchen, you can download all of our kitchen materials. It includes questionnaires. So, and that helps with, questions about how we operate in the kitchen, all those things. But from my perspective, it's a combination of a initial, filling out a form and answering those questions, and then a personal interview, usually along with a tour of the kitchen, that we use to assess whether or not this is a person that could be a good fit. Yeah. How to do that really well is a matter of experience, but there are some, just like if you've hired individuals, there are some good golden rules. If they've been hopping around from place to place, they probably, there's a good reason for why they're hopping around from place to place. If they've never run a business before, then you want to ask them, do they have a business plan, right? Some basic stuff that sort of helps keep the success rate high for the tenants come in. And of course, we make a mistake and the tenant doesn't fit, and then we have to help them understand why it's important for them to behave the way that works for everybody. Some really interesting, difficult conversations can ensure. So additional questions anybody has?
Oh yeah, Charlie, I do. I appreciate hearing about you guys. I've had some of your products or things that's come through your wholesale division. So you guys are at ESOP. Is that similar to what Bob's Red Mill was, or was there another
A great
aspect to that?
Great question. It's actually not an ESOP. ESOP is what Bob's Red Mill is.
Right.
And that's employee ownership with equity stake. This is an EOT, or employee owned trust, relatively newer model. I think we're number 7 in the United States. Organically grown company here in Eugene is another example of that. And it's a very flexible model with a lot of different governance and ownership potential that you can decide as an owner what it would look like. So that topic of the EOT is quite deep and would be hard for me in a short period of time to explain it usefully. But essentially, for me, the important parts was that the purpose of the company, why Hummingbird exists, continues in perpetuity. So the company, whoever is running it, needs to be beholden not just to a shareholder expectation of making money, but also to purpose. Why are we in business? And if they aren't doing that, someone can sue them for not meeting their legal obligations, right? So it's an entirely new way of thinking about business as being of value to the community and how to preserve that value over time.
Okay, and now piggybacking on that, some of the other businesses that's under the umbrella, they don't have anything, or they're not connected to that side of the company or anything, right?
That's typically true, yes. We basically are fostering them by having Hummingbird kind of be the umbrella organization, if you will, right? So the incubator kitchen by itself would have a hard time being successful if Hummingbird wasn't willing to take some responsibility, have management level competencies, have a food safety person who understands how all that works, right? All of those specialized skills are accessible to the kitchen because Hummingbird needs those to operate on a day-to-day basis. So in that way, there's a great synergy, but there's not an ownership synergy or an expectation there.
Okay, and my last is, how long you guys been in business?
So Hummingbird was a business that my wife and I bought. It was about 17 years old when we purchased it. Maybe we had $300,000 in sales the year that we bought it, and now has 50 people and over 13 million in sales. So we're a business that's been around under my direction for 21 years.
Okay, so you're not a youngster, even
No,
though your face might say something
thanks for pointing that out, Will.
But no, I'm impressed and definitely appreciate you guys being here today.
Thank you. And really, to know Hummingbird, you should come visit, and we would be happy to host a tour if that's of interest to this group, because really it's a lot to take in just over a Zoom meeting.
Yeah.
We'd
Thank
love
you.
to set up a tour. Lauren and I have been chatting about that, and we thought we would set it up for sometime after this meeting because we would have a good introduction. Adriana, it looks like you have a question that you wanted to ask.
Yeah, I put it in the chat, but is your kitchen application in any languages other than English, or have you had kitchen tenants who don't speak or read English as their primary language?
Sure. I mean, today is such a wonderful environment for multilingual things where you could take a document and pretty easily translate it. So we haven't really seen that be the limit. We have Spanish speaking preferred customers for the kitchen, and I speak Spanish myself. And so there's, opportunities for them, I think, that might make it a little bit easier. It definitely is not set up for that as a particular focus. Yeah. So good point. It's very important to think about your audience and who's interested in what you have to offer.
Cool. Thanks.
Do you have any other questions brewing in the chat or in the group here?
Well, I want to say, if not, just really appreciate what this organization is doing. Hummingbird has been working in the food space, and since 2010 in particular, with the local food movement kind of getting a lot of attention, it's just a huge opportunity. And food is such it requires collaboration. Right? There's so many elements of it that don't function independently. And I found it as an organization very difficult to move it, to make it work better by working independently. It's just almost impossible, if not impossible. So just how important what you're doing is to have people sharing from different perspectives, seeing opportunities, and then as an organization directing resources toward that. I just really appreciate what you're up to. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us, Charlie, and thanks for sharing so much and just the tremendous amount of experience you have. There was a number of folks that said, I think Erin Maidlow was saying that Hummingbird was really helpful when she was setting up her shared kitchen. So it's incredible to have the support from larger entities engaging with those of us who are working in the world of startup or in a little tiny kitchen in the middle of, the Rogue Valley or in Medford, Oregon, or wherever all we're located. It's just huge to have some experienced folks sharing with us, and we'd be happy to take you up on a tour.
Great. Love to do that. But I just want to say, I mean, from my experience, what we're trying to do at small scales is almost an impossibility to do without collaboration. It's so hard financially, right? It's about caring and wanting to make it happen. So how do we make it more financially remunerative so that people can keep doing it after their initial enthusiasm, needs to pay the bill? And I think that's a really difficult question to answer. And I've talked to so many food hub inspired organizations that don't end up succeeding, right? And so if we think of it like, I think the model of having a existing business that's making money, shepherding that activity as a really good approach to take to have long-term success. Because I mean, if a piece of equipment breaks $17,000, Hummingbird can afford that. It's not like, I don't have that access to that capital. But $17,000 when I was starting out would have broken the bank. I wouldn't be able to go borrow that money even without really putting my own business at jeopardy. So this differentiation between large and small, I think the way to bridge that is to find a willing partner, right? People who want the same outcomes, but aren't necessarily at the same level of activity. So just from my experience, look for that in your own trying to set up something that functions.
Yeah, we're learning. Some of us are learning the hard way. Well, we're all learning the hard way every day. I think you probably never stop doing that. But we're definitely learning to work together and learning to leverage our existing partnerships in our community and across the state. So we're really grateful. We have a comment in here from Sherilyn Gardner. She admires your mission, and she's been doing shared kitchening all over the place for a while. Super appreciate it.
Sydney.
Yeah.
Can I do what I occasionally do?
What you occasionally are you going to derail us?
No, I'm not gonna derail you. But I think what Charlie is doing, or what they're doing there at Hummingbird, and Charlie, it's just it's a definite internal question, but because of the political atmosphere and at least where things seem to be, do you see opportunities in the whole national conversation of food and health and things along that line that can be an opportunity instead of looking just at the political side of it saying, oh no, this is going to be beneficial in the bigger scheme of things over the next 4 to 6 years or so?
Oh, well, that's a good question. I would say when I was a young man, the Cold War was the primary concern, and we were doing our nuclear bomb, exercises at school, right? Like every generation has its existential fear, what could
Yeah,
happen, that would be the worst thing. And not to say those things couldn't happen, but where I'd like to focus is on what we can do, right?
right,
And I personally find that I live in a community of people that mostly share my values. If we talk about that we care about our children, we can find that everybody who's a parent does, right? Or most people who are a parent do. And so we're looking for those shared values in a political climate that is so separating us. And then for me, at least, both spiritually and personally, how can we build more healthy relationships? And I think of that at every level of interaction. So with you as a person, with me in relationship to my organization or my work, with me in relationship to my money, my personal partner, all those things. If we can get healthier as a community and having relationships that work, then all of those other opportunities get resolved, right? So that makes me have personal power and not be the victim of whatever those existential fears are. And my wife's like, okay, well, the flood's going to come from the earthquake, and so let's get prepared. And I say, yes, but let's also create a better life for ourselves while we're doing it. Like, let's get multiple values out of the effort
right.
to prepare for the worst case scenario. So that's my personal approach, and that's kept me optimistic through a variety of cycles. Maybe this one is more in all of our faces in certain ways for the values that this organization carries. I do happen to know that some of the people that are part of the current government wouldn't have gotten there without that kind of controversial perspectives, and there's some opportunity there. Um, but the government isn't where that will get realized. It happens here. It happens with each of
That's
you individually making a decision to participate in creating the life that you want. And we are collectively more powerful than any external environment. So that's what I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I agree. Matter of fact, my wife and I in 2003 and 4 almost moved down to Eugene because of the food culture
Yeah.
and what we wanted to be a part of. So I
Yeah.
appreciate
If we can't have the food culture we want in Eugene area, then it's not possible. We
that.
have everything that's needed, and it's still hard, right? And then if you're in North Carolina, well, that's another degree of difficulty, or whatever, wherever you're located. Other than here, it's pretty difficult. So we're a model, right? We're able to show what's possible, and then hopefully share that, so that other people can try the parts that might fit their particular region or their particular set of values.
Yeah,
My
yeah.
perspectives.
And Eugene should have probably, in the earlier years when they were kids with tie shirts, okay, probably should have registered or trademarked the farmers market label where they could have had a residual income because Eugene was kind of the foundation for that whole movement.
And frankly, it still has a lot of resources. I mean, the company that I run, Hummingbird, has relied on the opportunity to call up Springfield Creamery and talk to Sue Kesey about what she did when she got to this stage of her business. And it's like a shared environment there's still a culture of connection and
Mhm.
collaboration. And that has allowed us to be successful in ways that I couldn't have imagined being successful otherwise. So if you are a person who doesn't ask for help readily, well, you need to work on that, because if you're in food, you need help. You need a lot of hands. I don't think any of us are ever going to get rich in the food industry unless you're on subsidies. And from my perspective, that's not why we're doing this. So the opportunity is to have each other, right?
Right.
I'm
Well,
sure I'm speaking to the
thank you
choir
again.
here, but in the context of the value that I have found over the 21 years, that's what I stay focused on.
Thank you again.
Yeah. Thank you, Will.
Sally,
Appreciate
it looked like you had a question.
I was wondering if, Charlie, could you tell, I think this group would be really interested in the Bean and Grain project and how Hummingbird started to change the crop planning in the valley. I don't know how much time there is, but I just think that's a pretty cool part of what Hummingbird has done for our community.
Sydney, is there time for a couple of stories here?
Oh, please do.
Okay. So Hummingbird began attending what was called the Willamette Grain and Bean project meetings probably 2008. And this was inspired by a group out of Corvallis called 10 Rivers Food Web. Harry McCormack is a founding member of that. He also was the inspiration behind Oregon Tilth starting. And the question was, can we grow commodity crops here in the Willamette Valley, grains, beans? You know, it's when I think of farming, I tend to think of a produce farm because that's what, you know, we could eat fresh vegetables all the time. That's sort of what's exciting about farming. But most of us get our calories from commodity crops like grains and beans. And most of us don't want to pay $20 for a loaf of bread. So the mechanization of that process has been a really relevant part of our having relatively cheap access to that. So Grain and Bean Project was, well, how can we improve the locality of that? Not buying most of the organic product even was coming from China. China was providing organic black beans and organic split peas and things that I know could grow around here, but trying to get a farmer to try and grow that was very difficult. The financial crisis of 2008, unfortunately, was a great help in getting farmers to be more interested in trying other things because for 60 years, the grass seed industry had provided a good living for farmers in our area who have soils that aren't well suited to high volume produce growing. And so you can grow grass seed on a wetland, you can grow grass seed in some heavy clay soils, and those that income just they were happy, and they had been doing it for so long. They had seed cleaning, they had developed these sort of adjunct businesses that made it very difficult to go to them and say, "Hey, try growing some wheat," and they're like, "Heck, no, that hasn't happened since the 40s." And what we remember about that is that there was this huge fungal problem with the wheat at the time, and so why would we bother to take that risk? So this group went out there and tried to find farmers to explore this realm of growing crops. Green Willow Farms was part of that. There were a few other local farms that were interested in trying, but mostly it was very small scale. I remember growing some orca beans on 5 acres with 2 young farmers that were at LCC in the farming business support thing, and they had never grown field crop before, right? I mean, this is a very nascent beginning level people who are willing to try things. When I bought the business, we bought a business that was growing pumpkin seed in this area. And that was, you know, a crop that I then took responsibility for, and trying to find someone to grow that was very difficult. So the economic challenges of 2008 really brought farmers to the table to say, well, what else could we be doing that would be better than selling grass seed for less than the cost of production? And unfortunately, today is a time when that is also happening. So we were able, as a business interested in this, to do a bunch of trials to find what did and didn't work. We probably had 12 different crops that were relatively successful in the Willamette. But as we got out of scale, we discovered that in the Pacific Northwest, there are specialty areas where those things are grown. So for example, beans are grown in Idaho. Idaho has such a large volume of beans growing there that they do not allow any bean seeds to be imported into the state so they can control diseases for that particular crop. It's such a foundational part of their economy, right? These are things that as an individual, I was not aware of. I didn't know that Idaho is so important for bean growing. And so as we've grown as a company, we have stopped focusing on the Willamette Valley and now focus on the Pacific Northwest, the different climatic regions, the different areas where economic challenges or impulses are so differentiated. You try and grow, you know, a crop in Seattle area, you need to have a tremendous amount of income per acre to not want someone to put a house on it instead, right? So Eastern Oregon, many fewer people, land value is less, but it freezes there. So what crops grow well in those areas? So over the years, we've developed an understanding of where does barley grow? Where does buckwheat grow? Where does wheat and spelt grow? And those have been put to place for Hummingbird. We contract forward with a grower. We say we want 100 acres of your crop. We'll pay you this when we harvest in the fall. You are going to be responsible for all the upfront costs, but sometimes we'll provide seed if that's something that we found a specialty seed for, and then we commit to buying all of that at once. Downsides of that economically are that we have a whole year's worth of crops sitting in our storage warehouse instead of a single pallet bought from somebody else who was doing that. So I think our inventory value went from $700,000 to about $3 million over a period of 3 years, right? It just required a lot of capital input. We got support from the community, invested in our business in doing that. We had personal loans to support that inventory increase, and we're able to do a tremendous amount of change work in the comfort of farmers to grow these type of products that they haven't grown since the 40s, really. So that's kind of the general story. We have shrunk that list of products to more ones we can focus on. Spelt is our area of focus right now. We've grown about 4.5 million pounds of spelt this last year. We have customers that take volume of that, and then we move some of those volumes in the industry. It's truckload. You buy it by a truckload, 70,000 pounds or so, or something, right? Imagine 70,000 pounds of wheat arriving at your front yard and dumping out on your driveway, and then somehow you're going to share that with your neighbors, right? The system of scale is pretty amazing to comprehend. And so a question I like to ask, like, how many pounds of wheat are eaten in the state of Oregon every year? This is all forms of wheat. Anybody have wheat flour? Do you have any idea? Right, 6 billion pounds of wheat. We're just talking about one of the commodity grains, right? The ability to move that much. People say, well, our food system is the I-5 corridor. There's literally only 3 days worth of food in Eugene. If the I-5 corridor were to stop moving and all those trucks were to stop shipping the food in here, we would not have food to eat in 3 days, right? It's very a sensitive system to any kind of catastrophic event.
That's true.
And so in this position that Hummingbird's in, you start to see these things that are, as an individual consumer, very obscure out there happening somewhere, but I don't see how it works. And as Hummingbird, we've encountered these sort of barriers to the food system functioning the way that you and I could imagine, right? A local farmer, maybe with their horse-drawn equipment, planting a wheat field of 5 acres and harvesting it, and then we get to eat wonderful bread. I mean, that doesn't work to meet 6 billion pounds a year in Oregon, right? Where does it come from? A lot of it comes from overseas. We have vast plain areas that grow wheat exclusively, acres and acres and acres. And the mechanization of that makes it cheap. One person in a tractor can plow, plant, and harvest 3,000 acres. Imagine as an individual with a produce farm trying to manage 3,000 acres. Like, the scale of our industrial food system, which provides most of us with what we eat every day, is vast, is profoundly large, and very subject to global economic impacts, right? The crop of sesame seed in China failing one year, Argentina has a crop challenge with sesame seed. All of a sudden, the price of sesame seed goes through the roof, and the small countries that grow sesame seed are making twice what they would normally make. And the next year, those big countries growing sesame seed have abundant crops, and those countries growing that small amount all of a sudden have a reduction of 4 times of the value of the crop they grew without them doing anything differently, right? And that system has a huge impact on farmers' livelihood in the United States and across the globe. So these like, what do we do about that? But how do we work with that? It's a very different question than how do I, is Eugene growing enough produce for us all to eat fresh produce from Eugene growers? So those are questions that I'm attached to and struggling to make sense of, and not well resourced enough or large enough to really make a huge impact in. But if we can come up with ideas that we could share that how it could work better, I think that would be what I see as the opportunity of the situation. So there are opportunity for questions. I accomplished a lot in that.
That was a great one. We've got time for probably a couple more. I so want to go deep on that whole topic,
Yeah,
and
I'll come for the tour, and then we can go deep.
Also don't want to completely derail our whole meeting, and we've got a couple other speakers.
Right.
But there's one question in the chat, and I think we could take that question and then maybe one more if there's another lingering question, which was from Sherry Lynn about back to the shared kitchen. How do you keep your shared kitchen resilient from emergencies? Do you have emergency preparedness and disaster response plans built into your model?
Great question. And we do for the building that it's in, but not for that specific set of tenants, because all the tenants are held underneath the umbrella of the larger building, right? So we had a fire alarm go off today. Where does everybody go? How do we know that everybody's out of the building? Right, those systems are in place from a building-wide perspective. Again, a much more complex environment than I'm in my home kitchen or I'm working with one other person in a small kitchen environment, and we're talking together about what to do about that. But obviously, the more time you have in place. You know, we've been here for 20 years, we've developed a very extensive system of systems where we have written procedural approaches to all of those things now. In the beginning, we didn't have any of that, right? And so I think like most of us, I encountered those problems by having the problem and not knowing that I needed that system in place in order to solve it. So, oh shit, you know, we just had a problem. Now let's put a system into place so that that doesn't happen out of that ignorance again, right? Is that everybody relating to what I'm talking about? If I had known what we were going to do, I would have done it differently and been prepared for those kinds of things along the way. And that's the benefit of talking to somebody who's farther down the road if you're just starting out, to avoid some of those sort of common pitfalls or things that you should have been thinking about, but you don't know you should be thinking about because you don't have experience with it.
Thank you.
Thank
Do we
you.
have
I appreciate
one
that.
last question? Oh, Charlie gave Shelley her first hairnet. Love it. Food safety 101. Do we have any last questions sitting in this group here while we have Charlie and Lauren on the line? It looks like we're good. Thank you so much. This has been great, and I'll coordinate with Lauren on a date for a tour and let you guys know when it is.
We'd love that. And you plan on about an hour and a half to be on site. Just want to say one more thing. I'm part of a group called Regenerate Cascadia, and it's looking at a bioregional, sort of mapping of the way food is being handled today and opportunities and projects that are happening in that bioregion. So we'd be very interested as a group to get your thoughts on what groups that are doing amazing things, like what groups like yours are contributing to the opportunity of the future. We would like to go do an interview tour and find out more about what those groups are doing, and then help all those groups understand each other and relationships to each other. So that's a nascent effort. I'm part of a group of 4 people. We could use a couple more people on the team, but I wanted to let you know that what you care about and what we're trying to do together is of importance to other people. And if we can find those commonalities, this is kind of coming from the ecological perspective, like how do we manage our opportunity in a bioregion, but they are just as interested in eating as you are. So I just wanted to let you know that it's an exciting time to be alive.
Awesome. Thank you. I dropped that into the chat for folks to take a look at.
Thank you.
Cool. Really, really appreciate the time, Charlie. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Take care. You're
Thank
welcome
you,
to
Charlie.
stay on the call, and you're welcome
Sure,
to
I'll
go
stick
back
around.
to your normally scheduled life as makes you happy.
Okay, thank you.
For the rest of the time, it's really hard to go after that, but for the rest of the time, we're going to hear from me, Caitlin, and Tracy Harding about what are the happenings inside of this Food Hub network that you don't see in these meetings that will lead to benefits to you. And I think we'll start with Caitlin's programming, because you've been seeing some of that. And then Tracy, you'll go next, and I'll kind of wrap it up with the things that I'm working on.
Great. Thanks, Sydney. And thanks, Charlie and Lauren. That was a really awesome presentation. I can't wait to visit Hummingbird, hopefully for a tour soon. So hey everybody, I'm Caitlin. If you haven't met me yet, I live up in Astoria. I used to work at the North Coast Food Web and have engaged with this group for a number of years, and with OCFSN more broadly for a number of years, and transitioned to consulting work, and I'm also farming this year, which is really exciting for me. But I've been working with Sydney and just wanted to give you an update on what I'm doing this year and kind of how that work came together. If you were around last year, you might have heard about a program where I was interacting with Food Hub staff at the programs and operations level. So think like if you have directors at your Food Hub, folks that are just beneath directors, maybe they're managing other staff, maybe not. A lot of our Food Hubs are small organizations. But focusing on those staff that might not be able to attend these meetings anymore, and they're kind of doing the hands-on Food Hub, moving the food around kind of work on a daily basis. And important to note that some hubs, the directors are doing all of those things as well. So want to acknowledge those people too. But last year, part of my work with Sydney and the Food Hub group, Food Hub Network, was to assess kind of the needs of that group, the Food Hub staff group. We noticed that there's a lot of turnover in those positions. I was in that position at a food hub for a while and had a lot of peers in that area. So wanted to try to support that group of folks. And so last year we tried to have these community of practice meetings that some of you participated in. And it was great, but ultimately we learned that adding another meeting for folks that were doing that kind of work was just really difficult to schedule. And we weren't able to connect as much as we'd like to. So that's all the background for this year, 2025. Some projects that I'm working on with Sydney, we're moving away from those monthly meetings. And instead, I'll put some of the projects in the chat, but instead just focusing on other ways that I can support people in this group. So the first one is, let me see if this will post there. Okay. The first one is just helping with the Food Hub Network with new members. So you might have gotten an email from me if you are like a new face in this group or just joined the meetings. If you haven't, hopefully you will soon. Or please reach out to me, Caitlin at ocfsn.org. But yeah, trying to connect with new folks in this group, making sure everyone's supported and that you have access to all of the resources of this group. Number 2 there, you'll see our trainings and workshops. So from last year, we learned that there's some gaps in just getting skills, including like business skills to Food Hub staff, things like management skills, and then also some of the more hands-on Food Hub activities and operations skills. So we have 3 workshops this year from a group of facilitators that have facilitated trainings for actually small farm businesses in the past called Becoming the Employer of Choice. So that's BTech program. And the first workshop, you got some emails through the listserv about this, will be on April 28th on strategic leadership. And if you're interested and haven't connected with me on that yet, please send me an email about that one. We're working on 2 other workshops this year, probably one in the middle of the summer that will be more like conversational and like, I don't know, everyone's busy in the summer. So focusing on like managing conflict and things that are coming up in the height of the Food Hub season. Other training program that's hopefully on everyone's radar is we're doing training reimbursements for this online training from a site called the Management Center. So some folks on the call today have participated in that last year. We're doing that again this year. Also, if you find other online trainings that are valuable and helpful and that you've participated in, please let us know and contact me. The Management Center site is just the one site that I've gotten good reviews from people in this group on. So those trainings have been helpful for folks. So that's why we're doing reimbursements through that site. But if there's other programs for trainings that have been helpful, we'd love to connect with those as well. And then the last few pieces here, something that came out of last year from talking to Food Hub folks is the need for HR services at hubs and other, hub-related small businesses that don't have their own HR person. So I will be researching shared HR services and reporting back on the feasibility of that in this group. And finally, just doing some reorganization and development of some of the resources for this group. If you didn't know, there's a Google Drive folder. I'll get the link in the chat, but it has tons of resources and meeting notes and everything. And then also getting folks connected with there's an archive for the Food Hub listserv. So that listserv that you all send questions and communications through is a really valuable resource, and the Google group has a whole archive of all the conversations there that you can search through if you didn't already know. So if you have a question and you are curious first what folks have talked about in the past, you can search that as well. Okay, and then back on track here. The last bullet point of my projects is to kind of encourage and provide funding for more Food Hub staff to attend any of our in-person events, like the OCFSN convening, or if we organize this tour at Hummingbird that I'd love to be in on, to get more Food Hub staff at that operations level aware of those opportunities and going to those opportunities, because that's been a really invaluable part of this network, is meeting folks in person that are doing similar work to you around the state and connecting with them and having them as a resource. That was invaluable for me when I was in that position, trying to keep some of that momentum going, in addition to all of the great work that's in these meetings. These meetings are amazing. So I realize I just talked really quickly, so I'm terribly sorry, but yeah, thank you. And I will put all these links in the chat. And yeah, please connect with me about any of those topics, or if you just have general like feedback questions about how to engage with this group or getting more support from this group or OCFSN. Okay, I'll pass it back to Sydney and Tracy.
The short story is Caitlin's here trying to figure out what all resources we have and trying to make sure that our staff and our executive teams are getting some support outside of just, oh, we're doing food stuff, because in this particular forum we really talk about food, but we also understand that there's a real need for personal development across all levels of staff within our organizations. And Caitlin's working on providing some of those, finding and providing some of those resources. And Caitlin is the master of the budget for making sure that we have funding to cover some of those resources. And if it wasn't clear when she was talking about getting people to some of those in-person things, that there is some funding support to get, not just the one person who would typically go, but hey, bring one of your hourly staff if you can, who would benefit from this level of connection. All right, Trace, you're up.
Hi, everybody. Some of you I've been acquainted with for years, and some of you I've yet to meet. I was involved in the Oregon Community Food System Network years ago when I was the executive director at Rogue Valley Farm to School. I left Oregon for 6 years to work at a food hub in Northern California, managed a food hub aggregating, farmer-owned food hub aggregating for 40 producers and doing distribution throughout Northern California. Super happy to be back in Southern Oregon and working with food hubs again. In 2024, I did an assessment of 4 of the food hubs in the Oregon Food Hub Network to help them identify operational infrastructure, staff, and skill gaps. And that resulted in some of the work that's happening in 2025. And Sydney will talk about some of that. But what I'm focusing on is creating some durable resources for y'all to use. So SOP templates for the 4 food hubs that I worked with last year, and then the templates would be available for everyone. I'm going to start with things as basic as personal hygiene and hand washing and go through things like workplace safety, work with Caitlin on the personnel handbooks and things in the HR realm, and then update some crop specific food handling best practices and food safety. There is a post-harvest handling guide that needs some updating, and I'm going to work on that. And I'm going to work on creating checklists for onboarding new employees, including which SOPs are to be employed at the onset of someone coming on and at what cadence they would be revisited throughout the year. And then also help to create a new producer onboarding checklists and looking at considerations when bringing more farms into your food hub. That's the basic of what I've got going on. a large library of SOPs to share.
Which is amazing. So I hope you guys are as excited about having all of these SOP templates and ways of doing things put together by somebody who actually knows what she's doing and was responsible for running a large food hub and managing staff in a physically operating food hub. It's pretty exciting stuff to me. So Tracy will be working on making it a lot easier for us to onboard and train our staff and keep them safe and keep our food safe and store our food properly. And all of that, again, will be in those folders that Caitlin had dropped in that are our public facing folders that are available for anyone to use, whether you're here in Oregon, whether you visited us once, whether you've never visited us at all, whether you're in another state. Like, our whole purpose is creating more and more transparency so more and more of us can be successful at what we're doing. Tracy's scope this year actually came out of an assessment that she did with 4 of our for-profit hubs, which are Lane County Bounty, Agricultural Connections, Gorge Farmer Collective, and Good Groceries. Tracy spent a big chunk of last year visiting with those guys and developing an assessment and action plan of, whoa, this is what you could do to help your hub be better at hubbing, better at profitability, better at food safety, better at marketing, better at all of these things. We've worked with those 4 hubs because, frankly, they've been participating in this network for a really long time. They are also the for-profit entities that have engaged with this network for a really long time. And we wanted to invest some energy in them so that they could then turn around and share, this is how you do this in a profitable way, because I think we all understand that the funding world is changing. And if we want to continue food hubbing, we need to understand what it means to food hub on a cash flow basis. So that project came out of this assessment project. A couple of additional projects that I am working on that connect in with what Caitlin and Tracy is working on is we are also doing some time or investing some time with the fractional CFO with those 4 for-profit hubs to further develop their business finance skills. From the work that we do there, we will develop a online marketplace budget template that will be available publicly for all of you to use, that has been vetted in real hubs. And then the second project that I'm working on is very similar for shared kitchens. We're working with a shared kitchen on developing a budget for profitability for that particular shared kitchen, which will then in turn be developed into a budget template for a shared kitchen operation that is available for all of you. And then the last project that is happening inside the network that is a little bit invisible through these meetings is, I don't know if you all remember, about 4 or 5 months ago, we had a presentation with Kristen Punner and Aaron Marr on the Hub to Hub Trade Network. They were calling it the Region to Region Trade Network at that time. Many of you were a part of that network. That was funded by Oregon Coast Visitors Association. The Food Hub Network is funding an extension of that network activity, which is constructed a little bit differently. FoodWeb, Jesse Jones is on the call. FoodWeb is leading a cohort of the trade network, and Aaron Marr is leading another cohort of that trade network. Similar story of working through, there's regular meeting times, working through a little bit of research and some information gathering, coming up with recommendations on what routes make the most sense to continue forth. And it looks like Shelley has a question about that. Go for it, Shelley.
Actually, I had a comment and I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's okay. I was pretty darn close to the end of it. I just want you all to know that Hub Trade Network activity is still going on, and then we have funding for that through November of this year. That's being paid for with some of those Oregon legislature funds that also paid for all of the grants that have the 2 grant funds. All right, go for it, Shelley.
I just wanted to to share some thoughts about the SOP project and that shared resource that you guys are working on. And I'm kind of excited about the connections in the room. And as one of the hubs that really needs to have more processes written out, but doesn't actually know how to do that or have the skill set on board. And also in honor of Charlie being in the room, there's 2 books that were really helpful in understanding SOPs, processes, and how to make a successful business happen. And so can I just share 2 resources that are great for getting an organization off the ground. It's the E-Myth Revisited and Traction, which is called Get a Grip on Your Business. And so those are 2 books that Charlie told me about a couple years ago that if you're struggling with your finances or your cash flow or how to operationalize a food hub, those 2 books were recommended to me and helped me get to a point where I understood I needed SOPs and processes. And so I just wanted to throw those out as helpful resources for people who are really creative and meta level thinkers that need to get details and data points down about their business. Those really helped me understand what's needed. And thanks to Charlie for that resource, and I wanted to pass it on.
Sorry, I'm typing in the chat and trying to talk to you at the same time, and I'm being very unsuccessful at it.
And sorry,
Shelley, please put it in the chat.
I don't know how clear I was, but I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, we've got a request for you to drop the titles in the chat. All right, folks. What questions do we have about what's happening inside the network? Do we feel like we have a better understanding of all of the wheels within wheels?
I'd like to respond to kind of the last couple of minutes of what's been said. I'm definitely excited about at least looking or stepping away from just the total dependency on nonprofit, philanthropic, and the foundation to keep us moving forward, where the for-profit side, and I don't care even if it's value added within those organizations, but I'm excited to hear what you're doing, and I want to kind of peer into it to see what's happening and gain some information on that side of the industry, because I've been 40 years in the retail side of it, and that's kind of my bent for profit side. But I think it's time that we go ahead and let the market, especially in Oregon or the Pacific Northwest, pay for what we have to offer, and not just we give a high quality of either product or service, but I'm appreciative of what I'm hearing now at this level of that side of the for-profit hub and such.
Good. I'm excited to create all these new resources, to be in a position where I think we understand what resources we need well enough that we can invest in them, and that we know how to share them, and that we have a network to share them within, and that we will have folks that have been through some more intensive training that can help us understand the new tools, so that the knowledge that we have becomes ever more embedded in our network. So I'm really, really excited about it. So thanks, Will, for the support. Do we have any other questions about what's happening inside the network? Because I want to talk about advocating for food hubs at the legislature a little bit, but we can answer questions too. So I'll start by apologizing about the 550,000 emails yesterday about advocacy, about a meeting coming up, about a mapping event that was not, turned out it was postponed, that had broken links. So we'll start by apologizing there. But Shin did send a template for advocating for food hubs and instructions on how to do that. I would like to encourage all of you to please take a little bit of time to submit some testimony, to advocate for yourselves. It's a really tough budget year. I was on a call with one of our legislators this morning, and he's really excited about what we're doing. Really wants to support it. Carrie, it's actually your legislator, Jeff Gold something. I lost it. Anyway, he was very frank that as excited as he is about this, that it is a really tough budget year and that there's some basic level of services things that may not get funded in Oregon this year. So if we want to continue this level of funding that allows us to invest in Tracy's work, Caitlin's work, the region to region food hub trade network, the grant programs, we really need all of you guys to lean on your voices and let your legislature know, let your Oregon state legislature know that this is important to you, that you are a food hub, what your food hub does. If you can encourage your farmers to support your food hub and mention the word food hub. Food hub in particular is very opaque to our legislators. They don't quite understand what it is because frankly, we're a little bit weird. We're excellent, but we're weird. So please, please, please take the time to go back and to do that work. Thank you. Got some, yes, Christy, thank you. Carrie, you're like a rock star for last night. Carrie was like, I would testify in the morning. I would talk. Just text me at 6:30 in the morning and I'll be on the call at 8:30, which we'd gotten some other coverage, but that was really amazing. So thank you all for the support that you've given this organization in continuing our funding. All right. Questions, comments, other topics we want to cover while we're together today?
Comment.
I like Will.
Well, I concur 100% that touching our legislators and such, or at least letting them know our interests. And the byword is food hub, because I spent 6 or so months with the food and beverage conversation. And I was very, very frustrated with what we have presented to the legislation. Okay. And to hear that they're putting $800 million toward baseball and all these other things that have nothing to do with sustainability, survival, and security, food security. So I agree 100%. We need to stay on our legislators because those are where the voices and then the marks for at least give them some context to what a food hub is and such. But I agree, Sydney.
Cool. Thank you. Is that? Oh yeah. Caitlin put the testimony link in the chat, and I will also resend the information today by email, and I'll separate that email out from our regular just recap email. Sherilyn.
Yeah, thanks, Sydney. And forgive me if the answer to my question is already in the work group. Again, this is my first time joining, but you've now said it twice that our legislators find that food hubs are weird. Can you just share a little bit about someone like me that's like, I believe so much and wholeheartedly in the importance of food hubs? Why do they think that? It's weird.
They don't think we're weird necessarily. That might not have been a great choice of words. But because we do so many things, on this call, We have some food bank folks, we have some shared kitchen folks, we have some folks who do online marketplaces. We have some folks who are doing online marketplaces with delivery. We have some folks who do wholesale. We do a lot of different things. So it can be really, we don't have a two-word statement what we are. I think when we say farmer, I think our legislatures have a picture of what a farmer is, or rancher, or fisher, or even processor. But because we use this word food hub, that means a lot of different things. It's harder for them to understand why we're a separate category of
Yeah.
funding and why
Yeah.
we shouldn't be lumped into the farmer rancher funding. We do different things. So that's why, Sherilyn. It's, you know, it's probably kind of a branding problem on our end, although this group very deliberately chooses to have an open definition of what a food hub is, because we want to serve as many people across our entire state as possible. And we don't want to be like, oh, here's your checkbox for what a food hub is. You don't fit all the checks, so you can't join us. And that's not really what we're about.
Right. Thank you. I find that with a lot of funders and agencies, they're challenged by anything that's not straightforward for tracking metrics. Reporting requirements could be complicated when suddenly basically they're challenged by public and private coming together to unite to do the greater good.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Yep, absolutely. And Sherilyn, it looks like Adriana is maybe might have some resources or some points of contact for you on the food safety, the specific food safety questions that you were asking.
Yeah, I just saw that. Thank you. I was just curious when Charlie offered it up. I'm like, huh. I was actually, to be specific, because he runs a shared kitchen, an incubator, and like I said, we spent the last 5 years being in shared kitchens only, and I feel like we've had more really disappointing experiences from having tenants that don't respect and understand safe food handling. So less about us not knowing what that is, because we are culinary trained folks, and we're Multnomah County Health inspected. So it's more of like, oh, I'd be curious to hear if their person has experience specifically for shared kitchens and all the stakeholders that touch that kitchen. Thank you.
Awesome. Cool. Other questions for this group while we have it? Thanks everyone for joining. We'll see you next time. We'll have a huge list of notes and resources from this one. Take care, y'all.
Bye-bye.